Hello everyone and welcome back to game week 3 of the 2024-25 Optegra Premiership, where you join myself, Ryan Sippel, for this fixture between Sevenoaks and Middlesbrough. Let's go through the squads very quickly before I bring you the action live. This could be a really significant fixture, certainly with regards to placements towards the bottom of the standings. I'll bring up the league table following this. Harry Bestwick, Kyle Alexander, James Mason and Miles Miller comprise Sevenoaks squad. Sevenoaks coming off the back of 2 consecutive wins, so they've picked up 6 points. Really valuable points at that. Middlesbrough have James Found, Kath McNichol, Kyle Forster, Umar Hanif and Ellie Renton. So let's show you the league table, because I think that's the perfect place to describe what different results can do for standings. Middlesbrough coming off the back of a fantastic win over Norwich City. 3 points for them here would see them bump up to 11 points, taking over both Nottinghamshire and Throssell's in the standings. If you offered them that prior to game week 3 commencing, they would have snapped your hand off. Throssell's and Nottinghamshire both struggling to get a real accumulation of points to put a buffer between themselves and the jeopardy spots. And for context, whoever finishes in the bottom 2 positions will be automatically relegated to next season's championship. If you assume, and I'd never want to assume, but just based on that, if you assume that Norwich City will be relegated, they'll be favourites to be so. Any number of the teams above them could be drawn into that, in terms of Middlesbrough, Nottinghamshire, Throssell's, even potentially Greenbank. And I only base that off of fixtures this weekend, and without some key individuals. Luke Kelly, Marcus Harrison and the newly signed Torborn Krop will be present from game weeks 4 onwards, so they'll have a real push up. Sevenoaks, as mentioned, a real fantastic accumulation of points. Had they not got them 2 wins, they would be in and around that conversation. But Middlesbrough on a little purple patch, and they're going to want to capitalise. And what a way to end game week 3 if they're able to secure 3 points against Sevenoaks. These two are long-standing rivals, having competed against one another in the various divisions of the WFA National League. Steve Crump, our referee, gets the teams into the centre to determine who plays where. We are soon to be underway. Five points for Middlesbrough this weekend. 2 draws against Throssell's and Greenbank, and 3 points against Norwich City. So they have the potential to secure 8 points this weekend. 8 points from a possible 15 is not bad at all when you're in a relegation battle. Heavy contact from Kyle Alexander very early on to get the game started. The direct free kick will be taken by Umar Hanif. So just let me talk through this passage. I'll talk about the lineups as well. Straight out of play. So the designated home team, that of Sevenoaks, only 4 players at their disposal, comprised of James Mason, Kyle Alexander, Miles Miller and Harry Bestwick. Middlesbrough, that of James Found, Umar Hanif, Kyle Alexander and Kath McNichol. Really exciting team here. Kyle Forster, number 10, with possession, reclassified yesterday to a PF1, so it will help his minutes in the selection of the Middlesbrough squad. He's recently exited the FA's Regional Emerging Talent Programme to take up an opportunity to play with Northern Ireland, having Northern Irish heritage. So he could be capped at senior level for his country sooner rather than later if he carries on his current development trajectory. James Mason here. Down the line to Miles Miller. Pick off across the box. Intended for Harry Bestwick. Couldn't meet his intended target. Kath McNichol now. Can't find Carl Forster. Kath Goldsborough coming off the back of a 1-game suspension, having received a red card against Greenbank yesterday afternoon, so back into the squad. Apologies if I switch from Kath McNichol to Kath Goldsborough. I'm still grasping her new name, her new surname, having recently married Carolyn Goldsborough, the Middlesbrough coach. Kath Goldsborough with possession. Very conservative approach from Middlesbrough. Certainly when you're referencing Umar Hanif and James Found, who have played alongside each other for so many years now. They have a really good understanding of each other's games. And with both being PF2s, you can see how it limited Carl Forster's opportunities within the Middlesbrough squad. And just for context, the classification system in Power Chair football, players are classified as either a PF1 or PF2 based on your kind of level of ability and disability, and you can only field 2 PF2s at any one time. So you could have a squad of 4 PF1s, but you can only have a squad comprised of 2 PF2s. And prior to this weekend kicking off, Carl Forster was a PF2. The man in question just controls it, but Kath Goldsborough not there to receive. Slight lapse in communication amongst the Borough squad. At the conclusion of game week 3, this being the penultimate game, we will, as we always do, be running a team of the weekend poll, where you can also vote for your standout player of the weekend, your unsung hero of the weekend, and the team of the weekend is where you'll vote for 4 players, 2 subs and a coach you believe or deem to be the top performers across their respective games. And whilst Sevenoaks have had some difficult defeats this weekend, some of their players will be in contention, will be in consideration. Likewise with Middlesbrough, based on kind of their own expectations, 5 points accrued so far is really promising. If they were to go on and win this, 8 points, when you're desperately trying to claw your way to safety, will be to the amazement of their coaches. There's no doubt this young squad has so much potential, but it has been an adjustment needed to adapt to life in the top division when you're referencing Umar Hanif, Carl Forster, James Found as 3 of the starting 4. This is the first time they're competing in the Premiership division, which is a considerable step up from that of the Championship. James Mason deemed too aggressive there. Foul in favour of Middlesbrough. As always, for those tuning in on the YouTube stream, get your comments and predictions in the chat. It'd be hard to call this, whilst on paper Sevenoaks have double the amount of points of Middlesbrough. I don't think that necessarily tells the full story, as Harry Bestwick, beautiful control on this right hand wing, just millimetres away from making connection on that 180. That was really nice. The initial pass from James Mason, the control which just took the weight off the pass, and it was only a slight adjustment that would have been needed to force an effort on goal. I think it's safe to say that James Found would have had it covered. There was a gap on that near side. Miles Miller now is going to look to capitalise. Rotated spin kick, blocked by James Found. A good opening 6 minutes to this game. Ricochets between Kyle Alexander and the Middlesbrough defence. Live on Court B stage. Chariots lead Greenbank by 1-0. Mason. Good work there from Carl Forster to just angle it out of the path. Kyle Alexander trying to guide it down to Miles Miller. Our officials, Steve Crump in the centre, Pete Westmoreland on the right, Pete Taylor on the left. Fired into the box, falls kindly to Harry Bestwick, who's happy to let that roll out of play for a Sevenoaks kick in. Into Mason. I think it's really important that Middlesbrough go for it in this game. They're able to secure 8 points from a possible 15. It will put them in good stead, certainly when you're considering their opposition in game week 4. Another 5-game weekend where they play West Brom, Aspire, Teesside, Newcastle and Nottingham. So on paper, you have to say that if they come away with 3 points in game week 4, that will be seen as a win, a positive. Nottinghamshire probably the only credible opportunity of registering points, considering all other opposition are locked in a 5-horse title battle. 2-on-1 in favour of Middlesbrough. So indirect free kick for Middlesbrough. Umar Hanif and Carl Forster just over this, discussing responsibility. Interesting approach, just trying to understand what they're going to do here. Both players equal distance away from the ball. Carl Forster, very interestingly, a drive-on approach, trying to put it in the path of his number 16 teammate. But James Mason intercepts. James Mason not happy with that 2-on-1 awarded in the favour of Middlesbrough. Just watched it back. It was very close, very fine margins, but power chair football is about fine margins. Obviously the 2-on-1 ruling, 3 metre radius needed between yourself and another teammate, and that's typically at the referee's discretion. They'll have cues and prompts that helps them determine 3 metres, but Steve Crump, one of the most experienced match officials we have at our disposal, so there's few better to make a judgment call. First substitute signalled of the game. Of course, Sevenoaks with only 4 players at their disposal means it will be for Middlesbrough. Carl Forster coming off, Ellie Renton coming on. James Mason here. Harry Bestwick, the only real option. He looks to act as that screen for the back post. where Miles Miller was driving forward but locked up by the defence of Middlesbrough. Eight minutes remaining in this first half. Nothing to separate the teams despite that attempt from Harry Bestwick. Down to James Mason. Both of these two teams have contested 5 fixture weekends, and I think it shows ever so slightly. They're grueling, they're intense. You have to maintain concentration and levels for 2 consecutive days. So it's always a relief when you can get this 5th game played, and if you can do so effectively and positively with points in your favour, it helps the drive home. I can assure you on that. Nice distribution, well read by Kath Goldsborough to cut out that pass from Kyle Alexander to Miles Miller. Alexander down to Miles Miller. Pick off back to his captain in the centre. Very heavy contact from Kath Goldsborough. She'll do well to escape a yellow card here. And she has escaped it. She is prone to a yellow card. She's, as mentioned earlier, she observed a 1-game suspension following a red card against Greenbank yesterday. Kyle Alexander just having a conversation with referee Steve Crump to make sure he's all okay to continue. We'll be back underway momentarily. So free kick for Sevenoaks. To be taken by James Mason. So direct, he can go the goal himself if he so chooses. James Mason, cleared by Kath Goldsborough, out of play. Mason down to Harry Bestwick, trying to find that gap between James Found and Umar Hanif. Nearly finds it. Very closely contested affair this, as suspected would be the case. Harry Bestwick there, a responsibility. It's a thumbs up from Steve Crump, fires it into the box. Intended for Miles Miller. So second successive corner kick now in their favour. Into Miles Miller. Umar Hanif locks it up really well, but the danger still present. Umar Hanif still in. Kath Goldsborough now weaving her way up the court. Final few minutes of this one. At absolutely nothing to separate these two teams. Mason. Down to Harry Bestwick. As you can see from that scoreline, leads Chariots with a 2-0 advantage over Greenbank on Court B. Greg Baxter calling the action live there. Here on Court A. Sevenoaks probably the more attacking of the two based on what I've seen in the 17.5 minutes, but nothing that's done a great deal to threaten James Found or Umar Hanif's goal. Mason just bypasses Kath Goldsborough, but James Found there to sweep up any secondary danger. Mason is communicating with Miles Miller on this right-hand wing. Back to Mason, tries to switch the play. The pass was never necessarily there. Intercepted by James Found. Beautiful control and intent from Miles Miller. It would have been just out of shot. Going to adjust the camera at the half-time break. With this bottom right-hand corner is a bit more cut off than I would have liked. So you wouldn't have necessarily seen that action from Miles Miller, but he made connection and has won his side a corner kick. So I'm going to disappear at the half-time break just to readjust to try and get as much of this court in as possible. We are fairly limited and restricted at the Lee Westwood Sports Centre, but it's a good interception from Umar Hanif. A rare touch for Ellie Renton. Final minute. Sevenoaks 0, Middlesbrough 0. A point here would be far more valuable to Middlesbrough than it would Sevenoaks. But if they can get 3, they need to grasp 3. Because as already mentioned, their 5-game weekend in April is one they will not be looking forward to. Or on the flip side, they will relish the opportunity to play 4 of the country's leading teams in consecutive games. But irrelevant of who you are, when you're playing West Brom, Aspire, Teesside and Newcastle in one single weekend, it can be gruelling, let alone when that weekend is comprised of 5 fixtures. Kath Goldsborough can't make connection on that 180. So out of play. We've ticked over into additional time. We've had a few stoppages, so maybe there'll be a minute or so added on. But you have to say, on reflection, neither of these two have really staked a claim to be the leader, to have a score advantage in their favour. So it's all to play for in the second half. Just waiting for that real moment of magic. It's really open now. James Mason didn't have the accuracy. Harry Bestwick was in acres of space on this left-hand wing, and on that occasion, Harry Bestwick too close, drawn into the centre. So that pass goes amiss as well. That is the half-time break. Sevenoaks 0, Middlesbrough 0. Let me go and address the camera, and I'll be back very shortly for the second half. Hello everyone and welcome back to the penultimate game of the weekend in game week 3 of the 24-25 Optegra Premiership, where you join myself, Ryan Sipple, for the second half of Sevenoaks versus Middlesbrough. Very closely contested, nothing to separate the two, and I don't think either will be overly disappointed with the current scoreline, as neither have done a great deal to influence it in their favour. I have adjusted the camera ever so slightly, so hopefully that affords a better angle than what we had in the first half. Let's bring up the live league standings so you can see what a point apiece would do for both of these sides. Obviously Sevenoaks in 6th, smack bang in the middle of the 12-team division, with 17 points accrued across their 13 games. Middlesbrough would go up to 9, so they'll go joint on points with West Bromwich Albion Throssels, and if you look, both played 13, both have won 2, both have drawn 3, both have lost 5, and it's just 2 goals between them in terms of goal difference. So if Middlesbrough can turn this 1 point into 3, they would of course leapfrog them, and they would go just 1 point behind Greenbank, who are currently losing on Court A against Leeds Chariots, who are a point behind West Bromwich Albion. So whether you're looking at the top, whether you're looking at the bottom, it is so closely contested. Let's bring the team lineups very quickly. Middlesbrough utilising their whole squad, often looking to the substitute bench. Sevenoaks don't have that luxury, with just 4 players at their disposal: Harry Bestwick, Carl Alexander, James Mason and Miles Miller. And Middlesbrough line up with James Pham, Kath Goldsborough, Carl Forster and Umar Hanif. Ellie Renton has been substituted back off for the start of this second half. But you are joining myself, Ryan Sipple, penultimate game of the day. We've got 2 great games to finish things off here in game week 3. West Brom versus West Bromwich Albion Throssels on Court A, and Villa Rockets versus Nottinghamshire on Court B. So 2 really significant results. Nottinghamshire will be looking to end their weekend on a high and take themselves out of them danger areas of the Optegra Premiership standings. But we have kicked things off for this second half. The whistle has been blown by Steve Crump. Moment's hesitation, but Carl Alexander eventually strikes it. As always, get your comments, your thoughts, your predictions in the YouTube chat. Shane Murray predicted 3-0 to Sevenoaks at the start of the game. It would need a real shift in momentum if that is to be the case. At the moment, they just seem to be cancelling each other out. So even though there's several positions between them in the standings, it's so close. Carl Forster back on in place of Ellie Renton, so I'll bring confirmation of that. It's been very physical from Middlesbrough. I think any further contact fouls will result in Steve Crump looking to his book. Doesn't shy away from awarding a yellow card if he feels the play deems it. Gave 2 in the West Brom Aspire game earlier today. So Mason to take the direct free kick. Harry Bestwick on the far right hand side, closely marked by Kath Goldsborough. Miles Miller the clearer of the options, but he'll have to be fairly clinical with his pass. It's a good pass at that, trapped by Umar Hanif, and James Found fairly unfazed by that attempt. Mason cleared by Carl Forster. Kath Goldsborough won't be able to keep that in play. Locked up by Miles Miller. The 2 number 10s of Sevenoaks and Middlesbrough locked in a 50-50 battle. better from Middlesbrough. They really struggled to break into the Sevenoaks half in the first 20 minutes, but they've had some presence there in the 2.5 minutes played of the second. It's just capitalising, trying to find the gaps. It's a very slow game in terms of its pace and intensity. A lot more strategical, methodical from these two. Power chair football is a risk versus reward dilemma for a lot of teams, committing players forward and taking risks, and sometimes leave vulnerabilities in behind, but when you take them risks, it's more likely to reap rewards. On this occasion, it looks like neither of these two wants to risk a great deal, but that is why this is playing out as a fairly slow-paced 0-0 scoreline, because it will need players to commit forward, take risks, be experimental in their approach to change the narrative. Rich, we never had penalty shootouts in the National League. That's only in knockout competitions such as the WFA Cup. As with any league, it's decided by point accumulation. From point accumulation, it's goal difference. From goal difference, it's goal scored, and vice versa. So, and it goes on. So, if these two, more so Middlesbrough than Sevenoaks, want to escape the drop to next season's championship, it's going to all come down to how many points they register. Corner for Borough. Good opportunity here. Umar Hanif feints to shoot, leaves it to Kath Goldsborough. The space closed down by James Mason. Miles Miller now takes control. There's no real options for him. Carl Forster, the right intent, gets the round of applause from the representatives on the Borough bench. Kaz Goldsborough and Paul Yates. On court B, Leeds Chariot still with a 2-0 lead over Greenbank. Here, I'm struggling to see where a goal comes from in this one. I think James Found and James Mason, as the designated goalkeepers of Middlesbrough and Sevenoaks respectively, have been fairly untested when it comes to saving shots. So, in terms of clear-cut chances, we've had little to none across the 26.5 minutes played. But Middlesbrough have certainly altered something in this second half. I think that was James Mason reversing into Umar Hanif. I think that's most definitely the correct decision from Steve Crump. Despite the appeals of James Mason. But this is what makes Steve Crump one of the leading officials. He properly explains his decision and rationale, which really helps the players process that. But it's going to be a direct free kick here for Middlesbrough. 27 minutes in. definitely the best chance they've had to have a sight on goal all game. Umar Hanif looks like he'll have responsibility. Carl Forster's trying to find the gap between the Sevenoaks defenders. He's just on the edge now. Kath Goldsborough to Umar Hanif's left, the right as you're viewing it. Over to Carl Forster, blocked by James Mason, a potential break on. Very conservative in their utilisation of James Found. He very rarely leaves the confines of his goalkeeper area. Umar Hanif deemed the aggressor there. So a foul goes in favour of Miles Miller. And it's exactly the same as the foul that James Mason committed a few minutes ago. Reversing into the player behind you, you're always going to be favoured if you're coming onto the ball. Back to James Mason. Miles Miller looking to pick out Harry Beswick. It's starting to become very stop-start in the second half. So an indirect free kick for Sevenoaks. Will be taken by James Mason. He has to go via the chair of another player. He looks like he's instructing Harry Beswick to take up a position on that left-hand wing. Fires it into the path of Beswick. Cleared by James Found, out for a Sevenoaks ball. The eruptions at the Lee Westwood Sports Centre can only mean one thing. We've had a goal on court B, another for Leeds Chariot, who are still very much title contenders, second in the division. Flicked goal bound by Kath Goldsborough. The follow-up effort from Carl Forster goes wide of the left-hand post. Spoken about the opponent of Middlesbrough in game week 4 of the Optegra Premiership. Sevenoaks also have a 5-game weekend to contest, slightly more favourable than that of Middlesbrough, but that's very much relatively speaking because they still have some tough games. They start with Villa Rockets before playing Aspire and Norwich, and then on Sunday against Leeds Chariot and West Bromwich Albion, current first and second place teams in the division. So both of these have tough games and weekends to contest. That's April 12th and 13th back here at the Lee Westwood Sports Centre. And as always, at the conclusion of today's game, please keep an eye out on the WFA's social media channels to vote for your standout player of the weekend, your unsung hero of the weekend, and your team of the weekend. Let's shine a spotlight on those you deem to be the top performers. Another indirect free kick here. Squeezes its way through. Miles Miller back into the path of James Mason. That's a really unfortunate own goal. James Mason, persistent, fired the ball into the front of Kath Goldsborough. Really unfortunate deflection. I've just watched it back. That's going to be a real bitter pill to swallow for Kath Goldsborough and Middlesbrough as a whole, but I said it will come down to certain moments and taking your chances. And the irony that comes when it's not even a shot on target, it's not even a shot on goal full stop. It was, I think, a pass intended for Miles Miller on the alternate wing. But 32.5 minutes in, Sevenoaks do take a 1-0 advantage. Over to Kath Goldsborough, looking to right the wrong of that own goal. 3 points for Sevenoaks would put them up to 19 from their 13 games. And then if you're looking above them, there's a 7-point gap between themselves and Aspire. That's the title race. The top 5 teams in the division, West Brom, Leeds, Teesside, Newcastle and Aspire, are all locked in a title race. And Kath Goldsborough nearly capitalises on a James Mason own goal there. Complete role reversal. But Kyle Alexander just about able to come across and prevent the equaliser, an immediate equaliser at that. Hanif. James Mason has to be careful here. They gave away a very late penalty against Greenbank, which almost gifted them a point. And when I mean late, 3 or 4 minutes over the regulation 20. Had Jacob Bookplatt capitalised, Sevenoaks wouldn't be on the purple patch they currently are. But this could be 3 consecutive wins for Sevenoaks in the National League. And I don't recall the last time they ever did that. Certainly in the Premiership division. You probably have to go back to when they were competing in the Championship to get 3 consecutive league victories. Kath Goldsborough into the side of James Mason. Umar Hanif to take. Five minutes remaining. Can Middlesbrough do something that forces the tie in their favour? Again, and the same sentiment and statement can absolutely be applied to Sevenoaks. Nothing in way of real clear-cut opportunities, despite that goal for Sevenoaks, which was a real horrible deflection. It was going nowhere near their goal. It just fired off the front of Kath Goldsborough's chair, and wrong-footed James found. Flicked down the line by Miles Miller. And whilst there's a lot of football still to be played, a 19-point accumulation probably, you would say, would be enough for Sevenoaks to escape relegation even at this stage. They're on the same number of points already at this stage with 2 weekends left to be played than they were able to accumulate across their 22 games of last season, and they finished 8th then. So you could say this guarantees safety, all but guarantees safety, sorry, based on historic league placements and the point accumulation that's been enough to stay clear of both the bottom relegation spots and that 10th place playoff. But who knows what can happen in the final 2 weekends. But you have to give credit to Sevenoaks. Despite the departures, key departures of Greg Baxter and Adam McAvoy, they've improved from last season. Even more remarkable when you think that they only have 4 players at their disposal and have had so for the 3 weekends played, and likely for the 2 remaining. Ellie Renton so close to squeezing the ball between Mason and Alexander there, that you would probably say was Middlesbrough's clearest chance of the game just 3 minutes before the end of the time. It just didn't quite have the power to force its way through. But nice connection nonetheless, as Sevenoaks are just happy to just wind this clock down now. I apologise if the commentary is dropping in and out. I don't know if and when you can hear me. No real reason for it to drop out, but hopefully you can hear me now for the final couple of minutes. I'll re-watch the stream. Typically, if there's a dropout, I can hear it, but we've experienced many technical difficulties so far this weekend, so it wouldn't surprise me if there is an issue. James found. They've got 1 minute left to try and find an equaliser. Irrelevant of this scoreline, it's been a fantastic weekend for both of these two sides. And I really hope they take a lot of positives from their performances, from their point accumulations. And they look ahead to an exciting final couple of weekends in the National League. Both are still present in the Jonga Group WFA Cup, so we'll have the goal of being able to be present at the quarter-final and semi-final showcase at Derby Arena on Sunday, May the 11th. Middlesbrough have Nottinghamshire in the northern section of the round 3 draw. Sevenoaks, unfortunately, for the third time, I think in 5 years, have been drawn against Aspire, who we all know how formidable they are. I can't remember the last time a WFA Cup final didn't have them present in, I think, 2022. The only one in recent memory I can recall Aspire not being at St George's Park at the FA Disability Cup weekend. So they have it all to do. You'd say Middlesbrough have a more favourable opportunity to get to Derby. As we tick over into additional time, it's been a good game. It's been a closely contested game, and it's just unfortunate for Middlesbrough that defeat, or soon to be inevitable defeat, as Steve Crump blows the whistle for full time, came via a heavily deflected own goal from Kath Goldsborough. Either way, it's Sevenoaks 1, Middlesbrough 0. I'll show you the live league table before I leave you. You will see Sevenoaks up to 19 points. So as just mentioned, they matched their tally of the entire 23-24 season. Congratulations to them. Middlesbrough with 8 points, but you see how close it is with Nottinghamshire and West Bromwich Albion Throttles above them. And how, if they can string some points together and some momentum, they can escape the relegation zone. Thank you to all that have tuned in to myself on this one. We've got 2 final games in game week 3 of the Optegra Premiership. On Court A, West Bromwich Albion versus West Bromwich Albion Throttles, and on Court B, Villa Rockets versus Nottingham. Thank you all.